Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Kirsty.
And this is our podcast covering the highs, lows, and realities of parenting a child with neurodiversity.
Each week we'll be sharing updates from our lives and hearing from a variety of guests about their advice and experiences.
This is Love Needs No Words. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Love Needs No Words. We're joined by Hannah Williams, who provides AAC support for families. AAC devices or speech-generated devices can help someone with language difficulties learn to speak or just give them a voice. Hannah carries out workshops and provides much-needed guidance to many families, as well as using her expertise to suggest the best apps. This is all done through her Instagram page, Hannah Joy Communication. Hannah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here and to meet you and to speak about all things AAC and communication, which is my favourite topic. So AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication and is really a kind of all-encompassing term for anything we use instead of speech, to help speech, to support speech, or instead of speech. So it actually covers everything from symbols, writing, switches, high-tech stuff, technology, all of that. What I'm really kind of specialised in and kind of and thinking about today is a particular part of AAC called high-tech AAC and high-tech robust AAC, which means really technology, communication app on an iPad with thousands of words, and the child or adult, can touch the button and select the word they want to say and the voice comes out. So that's essentially the kind of high-tech AAC is the bit that, again, many people haven't kind of either heard of or had a chance to experience.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because I think for so many people, just being given the opportunity to have a voice or even just be able to learn to speak in a different way must be so beneficial. So what made you get into this line of work?
Well, I've really been interested in communication. I've been reflecting on this recently, and since I was about 5 years old, my younger sister Beth has Down syndrome, and so as an older sister, we started using Makaton and using signs. And I remember vividly that joy of kind of going to find a sign. At that point, they were all photocopied and printed out by the speech therapist, and find the sign for sister and use it with her. And she would learn this skill that so many other people didn't have. She was a step ahead. She was better than so many, other people at this particular skill. And it was a source of so much, as I say, joy and celebration and moments where we were able to connect as a family. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's where it started. And that's really now why my focus still is so much on families and on parents and on giving families the support they need to just connect, with each other in the way that they want to, and in the way they want to parent and the way they want to be, and to do that as early for families as possible.
It must be quite daunting for some families to try and incorporate it into their lives, because technology is not something that we're always familiar with. So it must be amazing to see the difference that it makes.
It's daunting for everyone, every human, it just is. And I think that, sometimes we're not as upfront about that. People get maybe given a device or they get hold of one themselves, right, off we go. And they don't realize, and people don't realize to start with that actually without that help and support to know what to do, they're going to feel stuck. And that's totally normal and totally natural, because it does feel uncomfortable to start with. It does feel like, oh, this is kind of interrupting the dynamic. And actually for parents, they're usually, all the parents I speak to have been so tuned in. Actually, they've changed how they've communicated over the years with their child. They've learned from their child. They've adapted. They've got this kind of really, really interaction style that's unique to them and their family and their child. So, which is amazing, because that's just the perfect time to let's use that and just add in some more words in a slightly different way.
I mean, my child's got limited speech, and I guess when you look at all the different ways that they could communicate, sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen it, that there's narratives around, AAC devices can hinder speech. And so what would be your opinion to those that are thinking that, I can't use an AAC device because it might, hinder their speech?
Honestly, even parents who are fully understanding and fully committed to right, we're going to go down this route, this is what we're going to do, still come at the end, you know, are you sure this is okay? I'm not doing anything that's going to make speech harder in any sense. And that's totally normal. So no, AAC does not hinder speech. I've been working with technology, with AAC, with high-tech AAC since 2002. So although this, you know, and many people before me were working, you know, with it long before then. And what that means is we actually have a really big bank of research. Now, obviously, things have moved on a lot in the last few years in terms of how we're understanding about children who are autistic, how they're learning, and that access to iPads is making technology so much more accessible for so many more people. But actually, the research is absolutely established. There's no argument that AAC does help speech. It encourages speech, it supports speech, it does not hinder speech. If that's going to be possible for a child, if it's going to be possible for them to learn more speech and learn to speak, then AAC will make that more likely, and it'll make it more likely that they can use their speech in a way that works best for them as well, and make that easier for them.
Because I guess it's repetition, isn't it? If they're pressing the same icon to get what they want, they're hearing that same word over and over again. But if anyone's listening, including me, are thinking about it, are there sort of signs that you say, oh, look out for this, this and this, because your child could find AAC devices really useful? Is there something that you look out for specifically?
I mean, it's simpler than people think. So this bit of it is honestly the easy bit. So if your child can touch a device, so they can touch a touch screen. Some children will be able to use YouTube and be able to do a wee rewinding of a little clip again and again and again, or find tiny little icons on your screen, or find the particular episode. But actually, even if a child can just begin to make contact, you know, with a screen and maybe make something happen, or has some curiosity about that, then from a fine motor point of view, they're ready for high-tech AAC. The other bit of it is just really to be honest, how the parent feels. If speech and communication is tricky for a child, so if they don't have enough, if the parent feels, and if a child doesn't have enough speech to enable them to communicate for all the reasons they may need to now and in the future, then they would benefit from AAC. So it really is as simple as that. As soon as the worries start, as soon as a parent is feeling some help with communication here, you know, speech is not developing in the way we anticipated, my child can't use speech to communicate for all the reasons they need to, and all the reasons, you know, I know they have more to say, I know there's more they're thinking and more I can support them to, you know, communicate. That's really it. Those two things, your child's ready from that point.
I just think that for the people listening, and for people that you obviously support and coach, what you're saying will be so reassuring to them, because I think there's a lot of narrative around devices and technology being really damaging and negative. And actually, it's a really empowering tool for a lot of our children. And there's obviously a lot of apprehension that parents feel around embracing that and bringing it into their day-to-day lives. And it's really valid that they feel anxious, I think, to be able, you know, to use it when you're told all the time, not too much screen time, don't do this, don't do that, don't expose them to iPads, blah, blah. And obviously these technologies can be absolutely life-changing for them, but it must be a real step for parents to go, okay, actually, no, you know, I can really see the benefits in this, and I have to kind of turn that narrative off.
Often parents will say to me, you know, we didn't start this for a few years because my child was so obsessed with an iPad, we were worried about would they use that for communication. Now, what happens with AAC is that we say, right, you've given your child a head start, essentially. It's the first thing I say to a parent. You've just given your child a head start, because as you heard, my first question to any parent is, can your child touch a touch screen? And it's like, yes, you know, they can actually. In fact, they're pretty, you know, amazing. And I'm like, great, okay, that's literally one part of our assessment done. You know, that's because the rest of it we'll learn. You know, I say we learn enough, we know enough to get started, and we learn enough to keep going. So I'm not saying that's the full picture, but it's enough to know we can get started. Do you know what I mean? We can start with this, and then we'll learn and support your child's fine motor skills and their learning of this as they go. But they've got to get behind the wheel. Like, they've got to get behind it. They've got to get touching it. So the technology, parents are giving their child a head start, without doubt. Many parents, I'd say, feel like oh, but is it giving them more screen time? We should be reducing screen time. You can think of AAC, and any AAC person, enthusiast, specialist will tell you this. Think of AAC as different to screen time. Just don't put it in the same category. But actually, we know, as you say, how much children rely on, screen time, their technology for regulation. So what we do is we put the AAC device on a separate device. We essentially turn an iPad into an AAC device. We download the app that works best, and we the best information. This is a good start for your child, and we get a good fit. And we put it on guided access. We lock it on for a young child. We put it on so they can't get on anything else and they can't go into YouTube and they can't take photos. And then we still give them plenty of access to their other device. And this is the biggest thing that many people think, I'll give them the AAC device. And your instinct is, I'll take this one away to encourage them to look at that one. And actually, you have to kind of flip it around and say, no, give them almost at least the same access to screen time as you normally do. And I never have to change that for a family. Families tell me, oh, my child has it all the time. Some families say we restrict it. And I just say, whatever you normally do is fine. Give your child at least the same access as you normally give them, if not a little bit more, so that they trust that you're not taking this away. And it's not instead of, because they'll look at this thing, which is, they're going to go, this is not as good. This is not Hey Dougie. This is, what is this? And they will be very cross and frustrated, quite rightly, because they think you've just taken away the thing that one of the things that they love most. So you get, you give them both, and you let them have both, and that makes that process of starting AAC and introducing something new and different, just that first step. All parents say to me, yeah, that went a lot better than I thought. Like, it's absolutely fine, And I'm not saying the child's using it all the time. They might just be given it to start with a wee side eye, and we look at it and think, oh, there's something different. But they feel safe, they feel trusting. This is about autonomy and freedom for your child, and them having control over this themselves, and us not getting them to do anything. This is about them. And so we've got to set that tone from the very start.
I was going to say, it gives them a voice and it gives them independence, which they probably didn't have before. And I guess, Hannah, it is very much trial and error with this. You're not going to go into every household, and it's not going to work for every family, but it's worth a try if communication is a big concern. But with the apps, is there also sort of different apps that you trial and error with those as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's about a dozen apps that I would consider when speaking with a family and thinking about what might be a good fit. But the choice of app is less of a big bit of the picture than people think. It's not as big a bit of the puzzle, if you like, as people think. It's actually, as long as you make as an informed decision as you can with the information you've got, and that is something that often you need some help with, to kind of make that informed decision, because these apps have so many different features. And as well as that, your child might have some specific things that are important to them around communication that we want to consider. Many of your listeners will have heard of Gestalt language processing, and will be thinking, we want to make sure we can record some of my child's like original audio that they love, or original phrases that they love. So we need to make sure the app does that if we know that's important. So we do need to consider all those things. But actually, and there is a process there. The other thing we need to consider is what the family needs. So if a parent says like, oh, we just use this type of devices like Android, or we just use this, or we need something that does this for us, or we need it to be on a phone, all those things need to be considered as well. But actually, the choice of app is a much smaller part of the picture. If you choose a robust, high-tech AAC app, and that means an app that has thousands of words, it has all different parts of language, you can use it to communicate for all the different things you may need to. It's got single words, it's got phrases, you can record on it, it's got the keyboard. We always start with literacy straight away as well. We don't wait to do that, give them the keyboard. As long as it's got kind of all those things, and it's got room to grow, grammar, with the child, then that's a good decision. You can then move on with the most important bit, which is learning how to use this yourself as a parent, so that your child learns the power of what it can do for them.
Do you feel like it depends on age and how quickly they can get their head around it on how successful it is, or have you not found that?
Not so much age. So we now know that children as young as 18 months can start learning high-tech AAC.
Oh, wow.
Now, of course, so that's really
amazing.
what we should be doing. It's really 18 months, 2 years, starting children with because it's language. It's giving children access to language that they can touch, they can play with, they can get a response from. And if they don't have speech at that stage to enable them to do that at that yet, it might be that it'll come, it just hasn't come yet, then we want to make sure that the child's difficulties with speech isn't holding back their language development. So giving a child and their communication development. So we want children to feel like they're communicators as early as we can. We don't want the frustration to build, or them to become maybe kind of passive or give up, or and I have to say most children I've got are incredibly resilient and don't give up because their parents have adapted so much around their communication. But we want to give children access to words as early as possible in a way that not just they can hear, but they can actually touch, they can have some control over that, and as I say, experience the power of that. But yes, all children are different, so the timeline for how children use AAC to communicate in what ways will absolutely vary and be different for every child.
I've got a question that might seem really strange, but it just kind of popped into my head. Do you work with children, or do children use AAC devices who actually are speaking but find it difficult to be able to communicate their needs or how they're feeling about certain things? Like, if you take my son, for example, he finds it really difficult to be able to express how he feels, like emotionally, or if he's in pain, or those kinds of things. Is there a space for AAC apps or kind of associated functionality for children who find it difficult to be able to find those words?
Absolutely, without doubt. Now, the few things here, we're learning this really from adults who use AAC, or adults who are autistic are really informing us, about this, and about so many adults now who've only just discovered, technology in recent years because it wasn't as available or as accessible before. People used kind of Apple Watches part-time and maybe use speech some of the time and use AAC at other times when speech just either isn't available to them at that time, or it's just quicker and easier for them to use, AAC to express something, maybe emotion, maybe feeling, but that it'll be different for every person, what the demands are around communication. But we're really learning that it can provide so many more benefits. I think so we're at the early stages, I think, in terms of supporting children like this. I mean, not so much early stages because we've known about it for a long time, but I think in terms of children who have quite a lot of speech, I think they're less likely to get that opportunity, do you know what I mean, to try AAC, which is why I think we're at earlier stages. But if the one thing I would say to families in that situation is that, so like if I speak to you, Kirsty, if I think about you, what you've just said, is you're thinking about kind of some particular reasons why your child might benefit from AAC. So you might get AAC and think, right, I'm going to kind of teach them how to communicate for those reasons. Rather than thinking about it like that, what would be more effective is kind of just following the same process we kind of always follow, which is you using it to communicate with them for lots of different reasons. And then your child will let you know if it's useful to them or not. They will find what's, if it worked, they will let you know. So it's about you just kind of starting using, so, texting on your phone sometimes, just kind of trying things out, seeing what your child thinks, embracing and trying different ways of communicating yourself, and text apps, and do you know what I mean, just typing in, seeing what happens. And as I say, your child might kind of discover a way of communicating, but it's really about just valuing different ways of communicating that aren't speech. But what that needs is you to kind of put that bit of time in, and as I say, trust the process, where you're actually doing quite a lot of learning there and trying out different things, yourself, before your child's using it back. And that's where you kind of need someone to say, it's fine, you're doing the right thing. This absolutely can still benefit your child. It's okay if they're not using it right now. Do you know what I mean? And I think quite often a parent or teacher who might start something like, it's not working, they're not using it. Think, well, we just haven't got to that point where they've really seen what it can do for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's about giving them time to see if it works for them.
Yeah.
I haven't used one before. I don't think Kirsty has, and I'm sure many people listening haven't. How is it set out? So, because you've sort of touched upon it there, where Kirsty's thinking about emotions, I might be thinking about single words. Some people might be at a point where their child could maybe form a sentence. So, are these things set out that you can decide what level, or how does it work?
Yeah, so basically all the robust high-tech AAC apps have these similar overall. I mean, lots of people will say they're totally different, but similar setups. The home page has got this high frequency vocabulary that's transferable to loads of different situations. So things like and go, yes, no, more, I, you, put. And it depends how many buttons you have on the page, but it's got things you can use in every situation. And then it also has like maybe specific vocabulary for things. And of course, you can use sentences. Now, what I would say is, yes, you can have kind of, if you like, tailor it like specific goals, but what we're doing here is giving a child access to a full language so they can decide what and how they want to communicate. So what we start with for all families, whatever stage whatever your child needs in particular, essentially, you need to learn this language, and you're not ready to start with sentences straight away. So although you think, oh, my child, like you're saying, Kirsty, maybe your child's at a stage of, maybe they would need quite abstract concepts, and they maybe benefit from you modeling sentences. However much you want to be, you're not at that stage yet. So you have to start with single buttons and like and go, and just do that for as long as you need to, until that motor plan of where to find those words is fixed. So for example, like might be the first button, I might suggest to someone, or we had chatted through with the family about what they want to do. But it's such a great word to start with, because you can just go, yeah, I like, and I would imagine I'm pointing, the words coming out, and there's maybe 66 buttons on this page, and I'm pointing going, yeah, you like that. I like that drawing. I like your shoes. Yeah, do you like going to see Granny, or you like going to soft play, or I like sausages too. And it's one you can just drop in with no expectation that your child's going to do it back. And honestly, that is enough for you to work on at once, because in that moment you are to start with, you are thinking, where's that iPad? I've left it upstairs and it's dinner time now. And oh no, I kind of want, and I'm actually serving up dinner for several children, and a lot of different food things going on right now. And I don't have time to do a sentence when I'm in the first few weeks of learning AAC. So, having it in the same room is just amazing. You don't even have to do it, use it to start with, and then push one button at a time. And honestly, what happens, it's like your phone, you know automatically where things are. You learn the motor plan, you learn where the buttons are by their location. But to do that, you've kind of got to use that knowledge, you know what I mean? Know that's how you learn. Get really good so you bank that word. It's like automatic. I've got it there, like driving, right? I know what it is, right? Next thing I need to learn. And then you add some more words.
How do you find that schools have kind of approached it and adapted to it? Because obviously what you're saying is that it takes quite a lot of time and commitment to learn it and to be able to use it. Teachers are obviously really stretched and must have a lot of time pressure anyway. Are the schools quite happy to embrace it? Or
I think like anything, it varies. It just like with everything we would talk about, of course it varies. But what I find is, with the right help, with the right support, with setting the right expectations, schools love it, absolutely love it. And they're like, oh my goodness, and then they see the child doing these new things, and so when they value that as well, and because sometimes again, the child's in this kind of, they're asking to go to Costa, or they're asking, saying, and I'm like, well, it's amazing. I'm like, yes, but we can't go to Costa right now. I'm like, yeah, no, that's okay, but how much nicer is it that someone can say, I want to go to Costa, even if it's like
even if you're
no, sorry, we can't do that just now. You'd much rather be heard and say that's what I want than not be able to say that. And when the biggest thing is this, it's just the same as working with any people, humans, parents, teachers, support staff, TAs, PSAs in Scotland. When they know what their role is, and they know what they should be doing and what they should be expecting of themselves, people don't want to get it wrong. They don't want to do it wrong. They don't want to break the technology. They don't want to do something that's going to, not support the child. They want to get it right. and they want to do their best, but they just don't know what that should look like. So once they have complete clarity on that, and you say, no, it's not your job to get the child to do this. It's fine. Pressure off. All you're going to do just now is have this here, and you have to meet people where they are, and start from there. So that would vary for every school, but you just press one button and do it then, and then come back to me. We'll do the next step. So I try and help people to feel excited, inspired, motivated, and just really seeing and knowing what they're seeing, when a child's doing something. So they're like, they did this thing, they tell the story.
I think Kirsty's right. I think a lot of it is the narrative around the technology side and people thinking, is this a really good idea? But you've definitely changed many people's minds, I'm sure, just by how enthusiastic you are about it. And we even had James on, didn't we? Some stories about autism, said he wished that he'd started it earlier with his son because he's seen how much of an impact it has had on him. Would you say that it makes a big difference? You said it didn't really matter on age, but the earlier that you can use these devices with children that are attempting to make speech sounds, the earlier that you do it, is it beneficial or not?
Yes, but I want to say that with a caveat, because I want to say, yes, the messages you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for your child to be able to prove something with something. They don't. Now there is criteria in terms of them getting provided with an AAC device and by services. There is in various parts of the country different criteria that children need to meet at certain points. But in terms of the evidence about what we know about when children should have access to words and start learning this, the earlier the better. As I say, 18 months to 2 years upwards, because as you've heard, I'm not trying to say this is just a magic, here you go, have an iPad and off we go, that's it. People need to understand that we will need support, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? You should have it. We all do. So the earlier you start, the more time you give yourself to learn. Having said all that, many people are only just finding out about high-tech AAC or just hearing about it, and I don't want anyone to feel like it's too late. We should have done this earlier. As parents, they've often spent, parents I speak to, many of children aged 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and they've spent years doing incredible things with communication that have adapted how they do things as a family, learn so much. No one learns faster than a parent who needs to learn something for their child. So the speed and pace that families have learned in the few years they have had their child is huge. I just find it completely mind-blowing, the speed that parents learn. So from that point, whatever age your child at, you're in the right place, the right time to get started now. You're just starting on just a really solid, great foundation, and it's never too late. It is never too late.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at AAC apps before, and they are really expensive, aren't they, Hannah? Like some of them to download, and people aren't as fortunate to be able to do it. So what's your advice on that? And sort of, is there any apps that are reasonable?
Yes. In a way, this kind of almost is a bit of a myth. And I don't mean to say that things are, everyone can afford to spend, the money on these, but there's so many options within this, and so what I would say is, yes, sometimes people look up things, and what they're looking at is, if you like, dedicated devices that are being designed specifically as kind of AAC devices, and some of those, because children maybe need to access them in lots of different ways and not just by touching, maybe quite expensive. When we're talking about turning a tablet, into an AAC device, this is some of the options here. So you can go with iPad or Android, but there are more robust high-tech AAC apps available only on Apple than on Android. So if you have the option to go for an iPad, that would be great, because it would just give you a bit more choice of some apps. So the apps for that, for an Apple device, and you could get, say, a 9th, 10th, or the newest 11th generation. At the moment, they're all under, well, maybe the 11th, is that maybe about 350 just now? But You can get some for less than that, the 9th and 10th generation. And the apps are between, some are £300-400. Some have a free trial for 60 days, 30 days or 60 days, and then are around £10 a month. Now, obviously, in a long term, that adds up, you know, and it's obviously not nothing, but it's more accessible sometimes than people think. The other one, so that's Apple. You've got options there. There's sales coming up on things, but as I say, I would get a wee bit of advice and have a plan for what you're going to, you know, getting some support after you've got it, if you like, so you don't feel overwhelmed and stuck. So yeah, as I say, you've got Apple, you've got some apps there. There's apps like TD Snap, people will have heard of. That one's around £10 a month and has lots of options. Grid for iPad, again, has a subscription that is around about that. It's come down in price as well, so it is about £300 for like kind of one-off payment, but it's going to be half price, and that would be lifetime access. But as I say, it's got a subscription, so you could start for like, you know, £5-10 a month, something like that. There's the assistive wear company that have Proloco to Go that lots of people have heard of. Now that goes on sale, but it doesn't have a free trial, so that's one of the ones that's kind of sometimes people buy without kind of having tried it. Do you know what I mean? So like, I think it's great if people can get their hands on it and try it first. And then there's a new one, Proloco, that's got, you know, I'm just saying this because people will have heard this, you know, some of them, that's about £10 a month as well. Doesn't have all the features your child might need, but is another good one. Then there are ones for Android as well. So there's Cough Drop, has a subscription around about something like £10 a month. Avaz and Weave Chat. I should have come to this first. So Weave Chat is free. It's a new app. It's been developed by a speech and language therapist in America and her husband, and it's constantly getting better. It's in loads of different languages. They've been translating it, which is one of the biggest brilliant things about it. It is robust, so it's got all those amazing features we want to make sure are in there. It can go on everything too. It can go on Android and Apple. Might just not go on like Kindle devices. Do you know what I mean? But might go on Amazon Fire, I think. I'm sure we'll get some comments. People who know these things will be, you know, adding exact the specifics here. But yeah, Weave Chat, if you're looking for something free to have a look at. But if you don't like that, don't rule out high-tech AAC. There's all these other things. You've got to love it. You've got to love it. So find one that you love. Yeah, I could talk about funding as well, because I'm talking about people funding themselves, but I do want to mention that people do have a right to, you know, be provided with a device in Scotland, and if that's what they need, and through speech and language therapy services or education services. And also in England, there's routes to being provided with things, and there is funding, you know, there. It's just that you need to go through a kind of particular process that can take, you know, a bit of time. But please do ask the questions, you know, and do ask for that. You don't have to fund it yourself. I just want people to have those options, all those options.
It feels a lot more accessible actually than I thought.
Yeah.
I have to be honest, you've taught me lots about AAC. It's not something that I knew a huge amount before, especially the high-tech AAC. So yeah, it feels more accessible actually, especially with free apps that you can try. Yeah, it's amazing.
Do you have a success story, Hannah? Someone that stands out that you've
so
worked
many,
with?
So many. I mean, honestly, that I've had yes, I have. I'll share a quick story. So one of the wee boys I was thinking of was little boy called Jack, whose mum came to me when he was about 4.5. He wasn't quite in school. He had no speech at that time. He had a diagnosis. He was autistic, and he didn't really have any symbol cards or anything else that was really working for him. I think they tried bits of PECs and symbol exchange things, but nothing that was really meeting his needs. He had a lot of sensory needs as well, and she had done an incredible good job, as I say, adapting. His mum had adapting her communication. They were doing intensive interaction, really, you know, supporting him from an interaction point of view. But he didn't have a means of communication, and she'd asked the services for, you know, to have a device, you know, to have an AAC device and to try that. And they'd said, no, he wouldn't be ready, or that wasn't something that would be helpful for him. So I started to work with her. And at this point, she was living in a caravan because her, the husband was building a house for them. So, you know, from a sensory point of view and giving everyone space, you can imagine what that's like. And so, and yeah, he had sibling as well. And he went from, as I say, not he is no speech, but she sent me a video when he said, "I love you," and looked at her with the biggest smile and just looked at her, and it was spontaneous. It wasn't prompted. It was completely spontaneous. And he looked at her. He's got big red hair and just the biggest smile. And he would give himself a clap when he knows but it was totally initiated by him. He had Proloco, and that is 14,000 words on it. So that homepage has got, I can't remember actually on the homepage, but it's 60 words, like 50 or 60 words on the homepage, like different buttons. That wasn't on one button. That wasn't an I love you. He had to go through 3 separate folders back to get those three things. So his navigation, she said he can work on iPad, he'll be great. And I'm not saying that this was like the second day, but a few weeks in, and he was doing things and she was saying things that she didn't expect. And this is the thing, it's not about him saying things that we want him to say. It's not about choice. It's not about requests. It's about a child saying the things you didn't expect, the things you didn't know, because that's what it's really about. It's like, it's those moments. For me, it's those moments when a parent says to me, "Gosh, I just turned my back," or "I just did this," and then I realized they were saying this, and that is, I don't know. It felt a bit random. And a parent will come to me and say, honestly, this happens every week. Say, "I don't know if it was coincidence. They just said this," and it's because it's not been in their on their agenda. Do you know what I mean? So a parent, and I'll say, "Did it feel like it was like a coincidence?" I'll say, "Well, no, because it was it's kind of what we were talking about." And
it's in context.
And you're like, "Yeah, no, it wasn't." Yes, there's always more learning to be done. Of course there is. But that child at that time meant to say that to you. They meant to tell you that. They wanted to tell you that. And that happens all the time, that a parent's like, "Oh, just said that." But that's because they've worked through this approach where, we're teaching a child to use this spontaneously, no prompting. Nope, we don't use any prompting at all. And that then a child says what they want to say in a timeline that works for them.
We've spoken about this before, haven't we, Amy? But for people who haven't heard their child say "I love you" before, you want to hear that so much, beyond anything. So to have heard that completely spontaneously, where he is obviously just wanted to tell her, must feel incredible.
Yeah, and amazing for them to be able to have a voice for the first time ever as well. Hannah, if somebody's listening, I'm sure there'll be many people that thinks, "I hadn't really thought about this, but I think this could be really helpful for me," and want to get in touch with you. Can they get in touch with you to talk about what apps would be great, or what would be the next steps once they get in contact?
Yeah, so what I would say is I've got a link that I will put here, and somewhere, when I say here, somewhere here. And what I would say is, if you click the link, go to the link, and it will take you to a little masterclass that tells you a wee bit more about kind of the approach to actually putting this in place, and a little bit more about the apps as well, but mostly about what you need to know to kind of have to, for this to be successful for you. And so that up front, what this journey can look like a little bit. So if you watch that, that's a really, really good place to start. And then what I also offer, people as well, a call, like a free call with me, like a 30-minute free call to have a chat about their child's specific needs. And I can't necessarily get into everything at that point with an app, because quite often there's just so much to chat about, but can definitely give, some pointers. But what I would say is just bearing in mind that the app is one part. So it's a bit that you kind of get stuck at. I need to decide on an app, but actually once that's done, it's the plan for how do I get help to put this in place. Because I work with families I've got a 4-month coaching program, so I work with families every single week pretty much. They join me online and I take them through things step by step. I work with their school as well to establish this successfully, so that people aren't feeling lost or stuck. And every family tells me that first 2 or 3 weeks when we're working together, "Oh, I would have done that differently if I hadn't had your help to just reassure me that we need," because the approach and not prompting at all and all those things feels counterintuitive, it feels not right, and I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing, so do you know what I mean? You need some guidance and support so people know kind of, this is okay, you're doing it, trust the process, because next, do you know what I mean? So yes, we can look at the app together and we can have a think about that, but just I can also, I can let people know how I help families as well. But get someone who's enthusiastic and really believes in your ability to learn this as a family and believes in your child's ability. That's what you need.
So you're based in Scotland, but you've got scope to travel around, have you?
I do travel to schools when to provide consultation. I was in the north of England not that long ago in a school, and but all my support for families across the UK is online. So I have families that I help in Southampton and London, Peterhead, Leeds, York, and I help family, children who are in English schools and not just the Scottish curriculum. So wherever you are in the UK, I can help you because I can see you online, and evenings as well. So I don't just see people in the daytimes, because often evenings are what works best for people.
Amazing. Hannah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us all about AAC, because like Kirsty said, we've learned so much that we didn't know before, and it will be so helpful to so many families that were thinking about it but didn't know enough. So thank you so much, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.